plus a set of vices. You don't need a table. You can do this anywhere you want. If you got a bench at home, if you got I'm highly jealous of Peter Collins, who has a kitchen table where he does his stuff. It actually doesn't happen at my house, but the point being, you need a set of vices, and you need this basic stuff right here, and we'll get into what that is. This next set of stuff is really, I'd say, more. If you get into it a little bit more, it's kind of more maybe nice to have, things that will help you in terms of either doing things faster or a little easier and better. And then finally, the last category is more stuff over time you may get into if you really kind of start digging tuning and like the craft and get into the enthusiast category. A pair of gloves can be handy. Nice little towel to kind of keep cleaning off the ski and periodically is also useful. This tool here is what we call a side edge guide, an edge guide. And this is going to help you, see it says 87 degrees? This is going to help you set that 3 degrees on that side edge that I was talking about. So we'll talk more about how to use this in a second, but that's kind of the edge guide. This is a classic, what they call second cut file. There's all sorts of different files out there. You don't need all sorts of different files, just a classic second cut is all I ever use. This happens to be the Swix one. This happens to be the same file, but there's one that's made by Artec. And this is another one, which is my personal favorite, which is another Artec file, but I like it just because it's easier to work with. I found this is kind of the one that most of us are starting to kind of get more comfortable with. So you get it up at Artec. I think they call it their 6-inch or something. It's that same second cut file. It's nice. It's got a little arrow on it to tell you which way to run the file, which is kind of cool. Diamond stones. So there's lots of different diamond stones you'll see out there, and I've got 2 of them here, which happen to be the Swix. These are the Swix Pro Racing ones. I like these because they're metal, so they don't bend when I put them on the guide. But also, more importantly, I guess, I've got the 2 that you need most often. There's the way they set up these diamonds. They talk about the more coarse to the more fine. So you'll hear about the 100, the 200, the 400, the 600. These are the 200 and 400. These are the workhorses. These are the ones you're going to use the most often. These are the ones I use every day. I don't hardly ever use my 100, and I rarely use my 600. I use that for race days only. Something around waxing is a good idea. So what I put in the basic category here is the cold wax basics. You may choose to be a hot wax person. You can go either way. Second, you're going to need something to rub in the wax and push it in. In this case, I'm just showing you a cork. There's some alternatives to rub things in, which is this tool here, which is that guy Ski MD's tool. It's really just another way of rubbing in the wax as an alternative to a cork. And then you are going to need some brushes, and I should have probably put those in this category. You don't need the big, huge brushes. You just need brushes that are one nylon one to kind of clean up the ski, and another fine one, either a blue nylon, which is really fine, to help polish the ski at the end. So these are the basics over here, and of course, finally, a scraper to, particularly if you're hot waxing, you're going to want a scraper to kind of scrape off the wax. And when you're thinking about scrapers, I personally like the big ones because I think they're easier to work with your hand. Talk about prepping up front and maintaining along the way. I was very happy to hear her say that for a couple of reasons. One, that was what I was planning to do, but also because I think it's the simplest and easy way to do this stuff and get into it. And the good news is, if you prep it up front once, maintaining can be very easy. You want this whole black surface here completely flat. You want it flat relative to the edges. You don't want the edges higher than the base. You don't want the base higher than the edges. So that's one key goal. You want a perfectly flat ski. The good news is you don't have to do that. Frank will take care of that for you one time at the beginning of the year. The other thing you're trying to do with the ski is you're trying to put a pattern into it. Has anybody heard of the word structure, or the structure of the ski, the structure of the base? Sounds like yes. That's just a ski tuning term for, hey, there's a pattern in the ski. And if you kind of look closely at the base, you'll see you'll see that pattern. And really the purpose of that is just to make the ski glide faster over the snow. Third thing you want to do is set the base edge. And base edge is actually not straight across. You may know that it's angled a little bit. It's angled at a 0.5 degree angle. So that's the next thing you're trying to do. Well, the next thing you're trying to do is set the side edge. And in the case of all the kids who are in this race program, the side edge is set at 3 degrees. In both cases, you not only want the edge set to the right angles, 0.5 degree for the base, 3 degrees for the side, You also want it smooth and sharp. Smooth is essentially sharp, and that's really what we're going to spend a lot of time on with the diamonds. But you want it smooth and sharp and set to those right angles. And then finally, the last thing is you want a well-hydrated base, wax base, well-hydrated, and there's a lot of science, a lot of opinions, a lot of theories on waxing. I'll kind of give you guys the basics on cold waxing and hot waxing and the different waxes. But suffice it to say, I think keeping it simple is the way to go. Putting a wax on the ski that's temperature appropriate is probably all you need to do. You can cold wax it, you can hot wax it, but ultimately you want ideally you want a base that's well hydrated, is being waxed regularly, and ideally with the right temperature, snow temperature wax to keep it as efficient as possible. In addition to making the ski go faster. What I'm going to show you is kind of two scenarios that I typically use. One is, and I'm going to show you the two extreme ends of the spectrum. One is, hey, I don't have a lot of time, basic maintenance. What do I need to do to kind of keep it running? So it's a simple, easy maintain mode. And the other scenario I'm going to show you is kind of all in. It's race day. It's the end of the season. I want to make it perfect and beautiful, and I'll show you what that looks like as well. When I come in and get ready to maintain a ski, is I do this. I take it out of the car. I put it in the basement. I turn it over like that. Rub it down, and let it dry. I like to tune a room temperature ski. I think it works better. But also, what you're doing there is you're helping with your maintenance by drying it off. Leaving it in the car, leaving it subject to the elements, is just going to make the ski less tuned and make it harder for you to get it back into shape. The other nice thing about turning it upside down like this is the water from the bindings is going to drip out. It's not going to drip onto the edge and rust. Put the ski on the vise, and first thing you do is kind of pull the bindings back using something like a rubber elastic like that. There's a few different kinds of those things. There's kind of this one here. You see some people using these, which is a fancy one, but basic elastic that can pull back the bindings is all you need. And really, I just put it, turn it over on the vices and just see what it looks like. Run my fingers down the edge and see if I feel any burrs or nicks. And hopefully, if it hasn't been skied that much, I'm not feeling that much. If there's something crazy that's going on that day, you might see something weird, and you got to take a look at that. But I just try to get a feel for what's going on. This ski, I'm kind of putting my hands down right now, and I feel a few minor burrs. So the ski's been skied a bit, definitely needs to be maintained. And I also kind of just looking at the bases to see if anything crazy is going on there. Hopefully not. Another important maintenance tip that I always tell everybody is, hey, make sure the kids know not to go ski over dirt. In terms of popping it into these vices is always put the base against the back edge of these vices. You may notice that these vices have a small little pad on this side and then kind of a long flat pad on that side. If you put the ski into the vise like this, and we've all done it, you're going to have a nice little mark on the base of your ski afterwards from that little dot right there. So just put the ski into the vise, base against the flat edge, tighten it down. You don't need to tighten it that much, you just want it secure. And then first thing I would do is get out the 400 diamond and start running it over there. Almost all these side angles kind of work the same way. They have some writing on one edge, made a smooth edge on the other side. That smooth edge is designed to run across the base of the ski. So you want to put the diamond on the side that has the writing. This one, as you'll notice, is an 87 degree, which is the 3-degree angle that we were talking about earlier. So you want to put it on there flat. I typically put it on at a little bit of an angle, just to kind of get it to run the way I want it to. I want to make sure that some of the diamond part is hanging over the edge. You want to say you're hitting the edge. And then you just put a clamp on there. You can use either, Artex sells a lot of these blue clamps, the Swix ones or those red ones. Doesn't matter which ones you use. I always use one clamp when I'm working with a diamond stone. I tend to use 2 clamps when I'm working with files, so I'm going for that. But the way you work this thing is you try to kind of hook it up on the edge, and I like to kind of make sure it's secure and held in against the base, and also held down from the top down. So you don't want it kind of bouncing around and moving around. You just want it right against that edge and not moving around. And to do that, you don't want to overpressure it, because if you overpressure it, you might slip. But you just kind of need to kind of just put enough pressure on to keep it in there. And I tend to work kind of back and forth motion. Some people only go tip to tail with a diamond. For the most part, all work on a ski is tip to tail, particularly with a file, particularly with anything on the base. But with respect to a diamond, from talking to everybody, there's two things people do. Sometimes do what I'm doing here, which is kind of slowly working their way tip to tail, but in a back and forth motion. A little bit of grittiness as you're going down. You might even be able to hear it. And you'll know when you're done, because all of a sudden that grittiness will go away and it'll be running smooth. And that's really about it. That's all you need to do to run a 200 diamond. And right away, this edge is in better shape than it was the second diamond after you file. And then I would run the 400, which is the yellow. Then I would run the 600, which is the white. And that would be my typical race day tune. As I said, I tend to also finally do the final pass after the 600 with the ceramic stone. I don't think it's needed, but I kind of do it. So, clean it up afterwards, getting any of that debris out of there that was generated from the 200. Then I'll bring the file up. And so this is one where it is a little bit more evolved. You probably want to practice on a ski first before you use it. The key to it is really just finding your motion, keeping it smooth. Another key is running the file in the right direction. That is, again, one of the reasons why I like these little files from Artec. They get the nice little arrow on it. But you basically put the file onto the side angle guide, just like I did with the diamond. Again, I like to use 2 clamps when I'm working with file, just to make sure it's secure. Some people use 1. I like to use 2. And you work down the ski to the tail. So in this motion, I don't go back and forth. I go one direction only. Now it's hard to kind of go, especially with the curvature of the ski and everything, it's hard to do one full pass. So I tend to do sections. So, I would start right where that ski starts to come off the snow, hold it the same way, make sure it's secure downwards and secure back, and just kind of rub that. And you will see metal filing shavings coming off as you're working through. I also tend to blow it off as I'm going down, just to make sure those shavings aren't in the way from the work that needs to get done. And there's a bunch of shavings coming off here. And you kind of go down to that same point at the end where the ski comes off the snow again. And that's it. And also, let's say there was a burr on the base. What I would do in that case is run probably, depending upon how significant a burr it is, I would either run a 200 over it to just kind of smooth it out a little bit, particularly if it's on the base, or even a 100 if it was something I thought I needed more coarseness to kind of get rid of. If it is on the base, a lot of people will freehand it. I personally don't like to do that, but a lot of people will just kind of do that to kind of get rid of it. But this little tool is the base edge tool. It's the equivalent to this side edge tool we're using right now. And you'll see on this one it says 0.5. So this is designed for sharpening the base edge. And kind of the way it works is you just put it right on there. So what I would do is I would put the diamond into that. Let's say it was a bad burr. I would be using a 100 black probably. And I would just kind of put it on there and just work it over the spot. I know I'm kind of running at the right angle and not flipping over the edge. So there is a little bit of prep there you'd want to think about if in fact there was something more significant going on. The first one we would do is the 400. And as I said, just kind of run it over the edge just the way we did. And just once again, right, when you're done because you'll feel it. You'll feel a little grittiness as you're going. Once you don't feel that grittiness anymore, you're done, and that's it. It's all that's involved with running the 200. What I always have to do is I either have my towel or a paper towel around. Certainly if I'm wet, if I'm using some water on the diamond, I'll probably use a paper towel to clean it up and just, there you go, that's the end of that pass. The next thing you do is the 400 diamond, which is the yellow. And so, same process, you pop it on the little side angle, work tip to tail. I prefer the back and forth motion as I mentioned. And there you go. Where the ski starts to curl up off the snow, that's where you want to detune forward and detune back. Anything that's on the snow, sharpen it. Now, there, and likewise, do the same thing kind of down here. I'm going to show you kind of a cold waxing scenario that these are focused on. This 7 is, it says right here, runs from the 18 to 28 degree range. The 8 is a little warmer. The 25 to 39. You will have some days where we're running in 6 and 5. Certainly last week, I think we were below 5. But the CH is a great set of waxes as well. And I only went to that versus kind of doing a mix just to keep it simpler and not have too much junk in the box, which I already have a lot of. So in this case, this is the CH7. Let's say I was rubbing it on. What I would do is always working tip to tail again. And first thing I would do is make sure the ski is secure in the vise. You want to grip the binding pretty secure here, because when you're working on the tip of the tail, you might flip the ski up, and I've done that as well. And you just got to rub it down. You want to see it, you want to chalk it on, and you'll see kind of the wax kind of rubbing into the base. You will notice that as you're working with warmer temperature waxes, it's a lot easier to rub on. As you're working with colder temperature waxes, it's a lot harder to rub on. They're harder in nature. They're all doable, but it's just going to take a little more work. So once you get a nice little chalk in, you can kind of see that in there, then you just rub it in. And there's a couple different options for rubbing it in. I think the most basic you can use is the cork, as I mentioned. Or you can kind of go to that, something like this, which is that Ski MD tool that they sell down at Ski MD. It's online or in Natick, Massachusetts. I use this one. I kind of like it. It's a little more for my hand to grip. But you can use this as well. The whole purpose is really just to kind of rub in that wax and kind of, get it kind of worked into the base. And you kind of want to work it in so you, to the point where you kind of see some of it, kind of see and feel it almost kind of grinding into the base and kind of working its way in. So I do that a bit, and then once you're done with that, the last step is to really just brush it out. And to brush it out, you want to use a fine brush. So, but basically, you take the brush and just kind of, again, working tip to tail. These things also have a little arrow on them. Just kind of brush it down until it's smooth and dark is kind of what you're looking for. And working your way down, I think you'll see some of that wax kind of working its way in. You'll see the ski getting blacker, and that's about it. That's a basic cold wax situation. Two really important things with hot waxing if you're going to do it. And really all you do is you make sure that you look at the wax. All these waxes have a iron temperature setting on them. This one says 140 degrees, which is in moderate range. You set the dial on here to that temperature, and then you won't be burning the wax as you're putting it on. The other thing you want to do when you're working with an iron is you want to keep moving. Because if you're sitting there in one spot, that's where you perhaps are likely to do something damaging to the ski. But if you can just continuously moving, you're not going to have any problems. The way I hot wax is I actually chalk in as well. So I will, what I will do is kind of put the wax up against the iron, and I'll touch it, and then I'll rub it in. I'll touch it, I'll rub it in. I'll touch it, I'll rub it in. And by the way, I'm also keeping the iron above the black part of the ski as opposed to over here where I'm dripping wax out of the floor. You're going to be a little more economical when you're kind of doing it that way, as opposed to the traditional way. I think a lot of people wax is they kind of drip it in, go down, and wax is dripping everywhere, and you put too much wax onto the ski. It's kind of, you can save a lot by just taking the process of, heat it up, rub it in, heat it up, rub it in, heat it up, rub it in, work your way down. And then once it's on the ski, I do kind of do a pass where I kind of make it smooth. I work out all those little bubbles and kind of get the wax evenly across the ski. And then I tend to do a final pass where I move down the ski. And again, when you're moving down the ski, tip to tail, I think John mentions it in his sheet, and you want to kind of move at a pace such that you see about 6 inches or so of wetness behind where you're moving. If you're kind of seeing more than that, you're probably staying in the spot too long, or you're probably at a too high a temperature. So anyway, that's kind of the basics of how you would work in the hot wax. Little cutout corner on my scraper. I'll just kind of work it down the edge and kind of take off the excess there, and then kind of work again tip to tail, and just scraping it down until you get the heavy coating of the wax off the ski. And once that's done, then you go to your final step on polishing with either a hand brush, again tip to tail, until it's smoothed out and the wax is cleared out, or again was the 200 to 400 diamonds, rubbing on the wax, and that's it. You're done, right? Again, very doable, very achievable. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's say it's a day where the skis have been, it's been a hard day. It's been a really cold day, probably like it's going to be tomorrow. And he's got a race coming up, or we know it's really hard out there and I want it really sharp. I'll do a more elaborate set of steps, which basically includes using a file and using more diamonds. So when I do kind of that more elaborate scenario, the basic approach is the same, but those additional steps really are the following. You start out with a 200 pass on the edge, just to clean it up. And you do that before the file. Then I'll run the file. And then after you run the file, you then run the diamonds again. I'll run 200 and 400 again. So it's basically 200 to prepare for the file, 200 again, 400. And if it's race day, I'll also then do a 600, and I'll also do this crazy thing they call the ceramic stone, which is, not necessary, but some people believe it actually hardens up the edge a little bit. So on race day, I do all